one thing. And it's the fact that these nerdy liberals are like, the Klingons are awesome. The Klingons in the intentionally targeted women and children on settlements. That was how they fought their war. They cloaked themselves and murdered civilians in all 3 episodes, in all 3 versions. But these nerdy liberals who hate Trump are like, the Klingons are awesome, and they don't like. You know why they don't like the Ferengi? I don't know if you watch Star Trek.
Not to that.
No,
not that.
They don't
much.
like the Ferengi because the Ferengi are capitalists. Like, they don't fight, but they have a lot of money, and they get other people to do their fighting for them. And so it's QAnon for left wing liberals.
Well, and that's the other thing. When did capitalism become bad?
Oh, that goes back to the 60s.
Well, yeah, but if you look at the people who protested in the 60s, they drive Mercedes-Benz today. Okay.
There you go.
It's the old adage. It's the old adage that if you're, what's the old joke that if you're not a liberal by the time you're 20, you don't have a heart. But if you're not a conservative by the time you're 50, you don't have a brain or something along.
Yeah,
those
but
lines.
the liberals who are getting older are getting way more extreme.
Well, they are, and that's the other thing that's changed is I don't like the term liberal. I prefer the term leftist. And a guy I had on my show once upon a time, his name was Dr. Bill Meyer. He was a doctor, but he was a PhD doctor, not an MD.
Right.
And he used the term. I used the term liberal. He corrected me.
Right.
He says, "No, liberal is not leftist. Liberal means free thinking."
Right.
And I looked it up on the dictionary right there on the air, and he was right.
So he's one of the reclaimers. There are people out there who want to reclaim the word liberal and take it from the left, take it from the progressive left. And I'm all for that.
I'm one of them.
Right.
Buddies of mine, these damn liberals say, "Wait a minute, I'm a liberal." Mm-hmm. You are? When did you become a leftist liberal? No, I'm not leftist. I'm a liberal. I'm a free thinker.
Right.
I think beyond all this traditional throw away the capitalism, throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have bad things going on, so just let's take a torch to it and start over again.
Until the COVID thing, the moderates were talking about, we're liberals, but we don't like these progressives. So they wouldn't say leftist, they would say progressive because of the Bernie Biden thing, which I was actually more in the middle on that than people think, because people thought, but they would be so, these, as you say, leftists became so racist during that primary. They were bad during the 2016 thing, but this year, they were so overtly anti-black middle class because they weren't voting for Bernie. Even Megan Green, the Ward 15 person, she talks all this good stuff about, every time a black person gets shot, she's out there marching, saying down with capitalism. But I remember the night that Bernie finally was beaten, and it came up on my thing, and there were some black folks, and I normally don't go back and forth, but a few times we've talked because I've asked her questions.
Sure.
Because she's basically used her position to try to advance Bernie.
Now help me out. Megan Green is
alder person for
in the city.
City, yeah.
City of St. Louis.
Yeah,
okay. I thought that's who she was. I didn't know her ward, but
one of the people advocating for getting rid of the Columbus statue, whatever. But I remember speaking with her, and she, at some point, it was like 3 or 4 black women were talking to her about why they didn't support Bernie. And she's lecturing them about, if you don't support democratic socialism, you're basically supporting racism. So then I kind of went through and said, well, you know what? Oh, man, that's not really true. I mean, anybody can be a racist, a capitalist, a socialist. And she goes, well, let me tell you what Martin Luther King said. And I'm thinking, what? So she's lecturing the black people who live in her community. I don't live in her ward. I'm in Vollmer's ward. And we're technically the racist ward because it's the Hill. And Vollmer's the racist white dude, which is another problem with the Democratic Party. You can't just be a white guy unless you bend the knee.
Sure.
Which is making the party suck. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Black dudes don't want a bunch of weak white dudes hanging around.
No man wants a weak man hanging around unless they can control them.
Right. Boom. There you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then at some point she was talking about, well, capitalism causes racism and slavery. I said, well, Soviet Union. She goes, they're not socialists. They weren't socialists. They were Marxist. And I'm like, oh my God.
Come on.
Are you serious? This is someone who has power. This is a person who is sitting on the alder board, doesn't have a basic understanding. What's the USSR?
The United Soviet Socialist Republic.
You know what they say?
What's that?
They're not really socialist.
Really? Yes. Really?
Here's another one from the guy who, this is a history professor at one point, the guy who eventually unfriended me. This is before the COVID thing. He said that, and you talk about tribalism, again, going back into the tribalism, he said that we were talking about something on Facebook, and I mentioned National Socialism, the Nazis. He said, oh, didn't you hear? They're not socialist. The Nazis, we're not saying they're socialists anymore. I said, excuse me? They were socialists. No, they weren't socialists.
National Socialists?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that's just, they go, well, what about, then the response was, well, the word Democrat is in the name of North Korea. They're not very democratic. I'm like, wow.
That's different.
Wow, that's a terrible.
Well, and they always start their names with the People's Republic of, which, again, is far away, but still.
I'm a pretty big Nazi Hitler. He mentions National Socialism several dozen times in his speeches. He says he's a National Socialist.
Yes.
If you look at their tenets,
everything is for the fatherland.
If you look at his tenets, it's relief of farm debt. It was guaranteed jobs. It was commandeering financial wealth and redistributing it to the people. It was a number of fundamental socialist principles. Nationalization of war industry, nationalization of capital, of private capital, specifically socialist views. What they're saying is, if you're a racist, then you're not a socialist. That was so what I'm saying is, the tribalism isn't just Facebook. This is coming from the universities. The professors are specifically changing and altering history. And that's something that we should be a little bit scared of.
Well, that happened several years ago in Oregon. Are you familiar with a guy named Brett Weinstein?
I remember the name.
He was a professor at Evergreen College.
Right, Evergreen.
In Oregon. And Evergreen College is a very, very liberal college.
Right.
And I'm using that term on purpose.
Right.
Brett Weinstein is a very left-leaning guy. He's a very progressive guy.
Right.
He's Jewish as well, and he always said he said that he always had a place in his heart for minorities because of the way that the Jews were treated or have been treated throughout history.
Right.
Well, at Evergreen College, I mean, his classes were basically they said, you know what, teach what you want and how you want, just so your kids learn something. That's what he was expected to do. His criteria was wide open, and he loved it. Well, they had a lot of race-related problems on campus, in Weinstein's opinion, made up and fabricated. And they had a day on campus, but that's it. No white people are allowed to come to school at all. None.
I remember that, yes.
Only black people. Or other people of color is the term they used, okay? I think they did that because there weren't enough black people to fill the sidewalks. So they said, okay, well, we'll throw the Hispanics and Indians in there too. So, but if you're white, you cannot come. He came. And they said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm doing my job. He said, well, you're white. You can't come today. He says, I'm not white. I'm Jewish. No. Jewish and white is the same thing. Go home. And he refused. His family was threatened.
Yeah.
Phone calls at night, death threats, cars vandalized.
Right.
He called the police. The police said, look, we've been kind of told to get out of this. You need to talk to the campus police on this.
Well, that's not going to help.
He called the campus police. They said, look, the dean told us to back off. You're going to have to talk to the dean. He talked to the dean. The dean said, yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and support these people on that because they'll fire me if we don't, so you're kind of on your own.
Right.
And they harassed him so much that he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone. Now, that was a case where it was the professors succumbed to their lunatic fringe because they didn't want to lose.
How long ago was that? I do remember that vaguely.
About 5 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago.
That's about the time where what they call the Great Awakening. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah,
he mentions that term.
Yeah, so that might have been one of the seminal cases of the Great Awakening.
Because Brett Weinstein, his brother Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, I know. I'm more familiar with Eric Weinstein.
Okay, that's his brother.
Yeah.
The whole Jordan Peterson, he's in that mix.
Right.
These are guys who are traditional, your quintessential reasonable leftists.
Peterson's hated amongst the people I was friends with.
Yeah, and
hated.
Peterson is very progressive, very leftist on many things. He committed about 4 or 5 violations, and now you're out.
He's out.
Yeah,
and that's where we talked a lot about that before with the cancel culture in the last event.
Yes.
So now what's happening, and when you talk about the tribalism, it feels like it's just happened right away, but it's not. It's happened in stages, and I think when Obama I think was able to temper it. Obama had the ability to sort of coalesce the hard left with the center, with even some of the conservatives.
Well, he tempered it on the left, but Obama is where I saw it, the hate on the right.
Oh, it was the tribalism, the anti-Obama tribalism on the right was out of control.
I mean, it was
to the point where they were like, "We love Putin."
Yeah. Perfect example. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I was called unbelievable names because Obama would do something that I liked.
I remember that,
and he would say, "I'd say, look, this is pretty good." What? How dare you say that? He's literally ruining the country. No, he's not ruining the country. He's not going to.
They're still saying that about Obama.
Yeah,
they're still saying that all of the gains black people made are from Donald Trump. That they gained nothing under Obama.
Yeah,
and the fact is that black people have been, and a person I recommend all your listeners to check out is a young black man named Coleman Hughes. I don't see him as a Republican or a Democrat. He's a 21-year-old. He's still in college, but he does very intensive research, and he does writing. I can't pronounce the name of the Quinta. I forgot. I can't. It's a funny name, the name of his magazine. But just look up Coleman Hughes because I listen to his podcasts.
Okay,
and he examines these issues. He deconstructs Black Lives Matter. He deconstructs, is there white privilege? Is not, and it's not from the perspective of Candace Owens, someone like that. Like black conservatives like that don't help the situation because Candace Owens,
they stir the pot.
Right. And there's Jesse Lee Peterson and people like that. Even Larry Elder, although I think Larry Elder has kind of grown up a little, has grown into his role because but even them, they're all very much, we're against the Democrats. We're against the Democrats. Whereas you have this new generation of people like Glenn Loury, people like Coleman Hughes, they're black folks who are like, wait a minute, let's slow down and talk about this. Let's examine the data before we say the cops are running around killing black people. They're saying, well, hold up. Is that really what's happening? And he's a young man who's living in this young era of Black Lives Matter and all this, and he's saying, I'm not feeling a lot of this. But he's an optimist. He's saying, look at all the gains black people have made from 2000 to 2020. And he believes that constantly comparing black people's percentage of gain to white people's percentage of gain is folly. Because until black people gain larger quantities of capital, if they're doing a lot better and white people are doing a lot better, the numbers are going to look like, oh, look how much more white people get. But he says he doesn't believe that is a legitimate way to examine everything about how black people are doing.
But he's a believer in the rising tide lifts all ships.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've never heard him say that, but I've just honestly just gotten into him in the last month and a half.
Sure.
But he's basically saying sometimes they just assume